Hi there and welcome to Lesson 8.5. Lesson 8.5 is called Factoring Quadratic Polynomials Part 1. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to factor polynomials that have a leading coefficient of the number 1. Let's get started with a little exploration. Consider multiplying these two binomials, x plus 3 times x plus 4, using the FOIL method. If we multiply those two binomials, we'd end up with this quadratic polynomial. So we see here it's quadratic because it has the x to the second power. And we also see that it actually has a leading coefficient of the number 1. There would be a number 1 right here. So if we multiply these two binomials, we would end up getting this quadratic polynomial. What we're going to learn today is how do I take this quadratic polynomial and factor it back into the two binomials that were multiplied together to create it. So let's explore. Where does the 12 come from? Look at the two binomials that were multiplied together. What would give us 12? Well, yeah, it came from multiplying those last two numbers, the 3 times 4. That's where the 12 came from. Where does the 7 come from? Look at the two original binomials. Do you see that it comes from adding the 3 and the 4? Absolutely. Those are two really great things to recognize. So now let's talk about when we factor that quadratic polynomial and we break it back up into its two binomials. First, you see that we have the x squared. We'd want to pull out x times x because we know that those are going to be our first two terms of our polynomial or our binomials. Then we want to think about what factors add to the 7 and what factors multiply to that 12. Well, think about the factors that multiply to 12. That'd be 3 and 4. That's one set of factors, and that's those same two numbers, 3 and 4, could be used to add together to give us the 7. Those numbers 3 and 4 are going to become the two numbers that are in the binomials. We could always check by foiling x plus 3 times x plus 4 to be sure that we get back to our original polynomial right here. But this is how we factor. We want to be looking for factors that multiply to the last term and add together to make the middle term. That's what we're going to practice doing today. So let's give it a try. Here's our first polynomial. Go ahead and write it down in your table. X squared minus 4x minus 12. Notice it's quadratic because it has the x squared, and notice it has a leading coefficient of 1. That's going to make it really nice and easy to factor because we just know that x times x is the only thing that can give us x squared. Okay, so when we're doing this, we want to be thinking about factors that multiply together to give us the negative 12 and add together to give us negative 4. So let's think of those factors. Factors of 12. We could have 1 times 12, we could have 2 times 6, and we could have 3 times 4. All of those would multiply together to give us 12. Well, which set of those factors could we use to add together to give us negative 4? And that would be 2 times 6, wouldn't it? Or 2 and 6. We could use a negative 6 and a positive 2 to add them together to get negative 4. So that's going to be what we use, the 2 and the 6. So let's begin to factor. We've got two binomials here. We know that the first terms are going to be x times x, and that's going to give us the x squared. We said we're going to use 2 and 6 for our factors. So we're just going to go ahead and place 2 and 6. We know that those two numbers are going to multiply together to give us negative 12, and they have to add together to give us negative 4. So we know one has to be positive, one has to be negative. Well, in order to add together to give us negative 4, we would need more negatives. So we're going to have to go negative 6 and positive 2. Now, a positive 2 and a negative 6 would multiply together to give us the negative 12, and they would add together to give us negative 4. We can always check by foiling. You don't need to write this down, but it's always a good idea when you're factoring to check your answer by just multiplication. So I should get back to the original polynomial when I FOIL. So I'm just going to quickly FOIL here. And the 2 times negative 6, negative 12. We know that these two inner terms are going to be able to be combined. Negative 6 plus 2, that gives us the negative 4 we were looking for. And there's our polynomial, which matches the original polynomial that we were given. So we know that our answer is right. The two factors are both binomials. X plus 2 times x minus 6. Those are our factors. All right, let's try this again on number 2. Here's our polynomial. Notice it's got a leading coefficient of 1, which makes it very easy because we know x times x is going to give us the x squared. Okay, so with this one also, we're going to decide what factors multiply together to give us the last term and add together to give us the 5. So think about factors of 24. We know 1 times 24. We got 2 times 12. We've got 3 times 8, 4 times 6. What pair of factors could we use to get a 5 if we added? Oh, do you see it? 3 and 8. We could have a negative 3 and a positive 8, and we could use addition to get that 5. So we're going to use 3 and 8. So let's get ready to factor. We're going to go ahead and go x times x, and we're going to use the 3 and 8. Doesn't matter which place you put the 3 and which place you put the 8. That does not matter at all. Okay. So now I have to decide the signs. Because we're multiplying to give us a negative 24, they have to be different. They have to disagree, one positive, one negative. We want them to add together to give us a positive 5. So we're going to need the 8 to be positive. More positive numbers, right? Positive 8 and a negative 3. If we added those two, would we get a positive 5? Absolutely. Okay, so remember, once you factor, it's a really good idea just to multiply those two binomials together again and double check until you get really good at it, okay? And then you can kind of trust yourself that you've got it. Foiling is always a good idea just to check. And we got minus 24. So see my inside terms now are going to add to give me the positive 5x I was hoping for. I got the x squared in the front and the minus 24, and that's the exact same polynomial that we started with. So I was able to go right back and get the original polynomial by checking with FOIL. So yep, these are our factors, x minus 3 times x plus 8. There's our set of binomials. Excellent. Okay, let's try another one. Here's number 3. Okay, so when we're doing this, again, we want to think what factors multiply together to give us our last term here. And we got 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. And what set of factors could we use that add together to give us 8? Well, the 2 and 6, right? So it looks like 2 and 6 are what we're using. So go ahead and start writing your binomials. Remember, the only thing to multiply together to give us the first term to get x squared would be x times x. That's why it's easy when there's a leading coefficient of 1. Okay, so we're going to use 2 and 6. So put a 2, put a 6. Does not matter which order you put those in. But we need them to add together to give us a positive 8. They need to multiply together to give us a positive 12. So in order to get the positive 12 by multiplication, they have to both be positive or both be negative. Their signs would have to agree. Well, they're going to have to both be positive to add together to give us the 8. So positive 2, positive 6. There are our factors. Again, you could go ahead and you could check with FOIL. And we get x squared plus 6x plus 2x plus 12. So you can see 12 is our last term, and our middle terms here are going to add to the 8x we were hoping for, and we can say, kind of check it off and say, yep, we have checked it. So our two factors, our two binomials, x plus 2 times x plus 6. Hopefully you feel like you're getting this. Okay, here's 4. On number 4, x squared minus 12x plus 35 is our quadratic polynomial. Let's come up with factors that multiply to 35. Okay, so 35, we got 1 times 35. We've also got 3 times 5, or sorry, not 3 times 5, what am I thinking? 5 times 7. 5 times 7. Oh, I can stop here because 5 and 7 can be used to add together and get a 12. So those are going to be my factors. So get your binomials ready. Remember, x times x is the only way to get x squared, so these have to be x's. We're going to put a 5 in, we're going to put a 7 in, and now we got to decide the signs. Now, in order to get a positive 35 when you multiply, they have to either both be positive or both be negative, right? They have to agree. So here, to get a negative 12, when we add them together, I think they're both going to have to be negative. Yep, negative 5 plus negative 7. And again, we can just check with FOIL to be sure we have it. You do not have to do this. I'm just showing you that it's a way to check your answer. And then see the negative 5 times negative 7, those last two terms, when you multiply them together, you get that positive 35. So we'd have x squared minus 12x when we combine these terms, and then plus 35, which is exactly the same quadratic polynomial that we started with. So we have the factors correct. Okay, last one that we're going to do together here, x squared plus 7x minus 8. Okay, let's be thinking of this last number 8 and what its factors are. It's always easy to start with this one. Think, what do I multiply to get 8? 1 times 8, 2 times 4. Well, which two factors would give us a 7 if we added? And that would be 1 and 8. So we're going to start with our binomials. We know x times x is the only way to get x squared. We're going to use the numbers 1 and 8 as our last terms because they multiply together to give us that 8. Now to get a 7, remember they have to add together to get the positive 7. So that would mean that we would have to have a positive 8 and a negative 1 to add them and get a positive 7. So here are our factors. It's really that simple. And of course, you get to watch me FOIL one more time to check it. See that minus 7? Sorry, that's supposed to be a minus 1. X, and then the negative 1 times positive 8, negative 8. So these two are going to add together to give us that positive 7x we were looking for. And this is the quadratic polynomial that we started with. So that's going to be a check for us. Foiling is just a check. What we are looking for is just the set of factors. So when you're doing this, you're looking for just these factors, okay? But the foiling is just a way to check. Okay. Now in class, if you were in class and not watching this video right now, these would be the polynomials that we would be factoring in class just to kind of see if we were able to do that with a partner, okay? Okay, we're going to do just a couple last examples here. On this one, we're asked to find the length and the width of the rectangle, and we know that if we were to take the length and the width and multiply them together, we would get the area. So we're looking at what two binomials here are going to multiply together to give us this quadratic polynomial. So let's start with that area. And we're going to factor it into the two numbers that multiply together to get us that area or that answer. Okay, do you remember this now? So we need to think about factors of 16, numbers that multiply together to get us 16. And that would be 1 times 16 and 2 times 8. What pair of those factors could we use to add together to get us 6? Well, the 2 and the 8, of course. So we know that we're going to start with an x times x because that's the only way to get x squared. And then we're going to use 2 and 8, so we can put them anywhere we want, 2 and 8. Now they have to multiply together to give us the negative 16, so the signs have to disagree. We're going to need we need a positive 6 when we add together, so we'd want that to be a positive 8 and a negative 2, so that negative 2 plus 8 would give us the positive 6. So it looks like the length and the width would be x minus 2 and x plus 8. I'm guessing the length here would be the long one, so we have length would be the x plus 8, and the width would be the x minus 2 because that would be smaller. And so there are our two sides to that rectangle. And we just had to factor. All right, on our last example here, we're going to see if we can factor this quadratic polynomial. We're going to use the same method we did before. So we're going to start by breaking this up into two binomials. The only way to get x squared is x times x. That's really nice and easy because it has that leading coefficient of 1. So x times x is the only thing. So now let's look at the 15. Okay, what are factors that multiply together to give us 15? Because remember, these last two terms are multiplied. So we have 1 times 15 and 3 times 5 are its factors. What pair of factors could we use to add together to give us the 8? And that would be 3 and 5. So we know that we need a 3 here and a 5 here. But notice we also have this y squared. To get y squared, we're going to need to add a y here and a y here. So when we multiply those last terms, we get y squared. Okay, so now to get the negative 8. The only way to get negative 8 when you add these two would be to have them both negative. Negative 3 plus negative 5 would give us a negative 8. And you also notice that if you took a negative 3 and multiplied it to a negative 5, it's going to give us the positive 15 that we're looking for. Okay, so these would be our two factors right here. I can always check it with FOIL just to be sure. So if I FOIL this, x minus 3y, just down here at the bottom just to check my work. Remember, this is just the checking. X times x gives us the x squared. X minus 5y would be negative 5xy. And then negative 3xy. And then negative 3y times negative 5y would give us a positive 15. Y times y is y squared. Now notice the middle two terms. They're xy, which is exactly what the middle term is right here. It's an xy. So we've got x squared minus 8xy plus 15y squared, which is the exact polynomial that we started with. So that means that my two factors that I came up with right here are correct, and I checked it with FOIL. Okay, went backward there. All right, go ahead to your summary. So when we're factoring a quadratic polynomial with a leading coefficient of 1, you'll see the arrow there pointing to the 1, all you're doing is you're finding factors that multiply to the last term, but also add to the middle terms. And that's how you factor this type of quadratic polynomial. Thanks for joining me and have a great day. Enjoy factoring.